Hey, what's up, everybody? This is an open discussion with C3 Films. My name is Chris, and this is.
Cheryl.
And today we're going to be talking about The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. So, spoiler alert, we are going to be talking about the details of what happened in the movie. So, if you haven't seen it, you can go and check it out on HBO Max and then come back and watch us talk about it. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So, The Conjuring is kind of weird. Like, this is the third out of the Conjuring movies, but I think it's like the seventh out of the universe because they had three Annabelle movies, one movie called The Nun, and then three Conjuring movies, and then one movie called La Llorona. So they've had eight movies in this kind of horror movie franchise so far, and as you can imagine, they've had a lot of ups and downs with their movies. It's not like they've had they figured out their formula like maybe like Marvel did um for their movies, you know? Like these movies are a lot more varying in quality. But as far as this movie goes, you don't have that much experience watching these horror movie franchises because you're not into horror movies. Like, how did this one feel for you?
Yeah, so I haven't seen literally any of the movies in this universe. And so I had to have that kind of explained to me going into it and just like knowing that that there were other stories. But I think it's fine, like, as it stands alone. Like, I didn't feel like I needed any other background besides the text that they give you at the beginning and the end anyway.
Yeah.
So it did like kind of make sense to me. I was like, because it does say at the beginning that it's based on a true story. So the whole
Yeah.
time I was trying to think of it in that aspect. Anytime I watch a movie, I just kind of like think about like what could be real, what could be like like the truth is stretched sometimes to make it the movie more exciting. And a lot of the time I was like, well, I bet in real life that, like, their eyes probably don't turn white and all that stuff. And then I was
Yeah.
like, when Arnie kills the guy, I was like, I bet he just killed the guy and he's probably just crazy or something. And like I'm actually kind of interested. I think that's why I feel like this movie was more interesting than your usual typical scary movie because I don't watch scary movies. I don't watch them very often at all. But this one was intriguing, I guess you could say, because it's based on a true story. And so I actually kind of want to read up on it a little bit more because I find just the fact that something like this to someone's belief, this is true. And so
Right.
that makes it interesting.
Yeah, and all the Conjuring movies are kind of like that. They're based. So Ed and Lorraine Warren were real people, and they really were. I want to say demonologists, or they definitely went around and they had these different cases. I think they even studied like a little bit of the Amity Horror case. I think they were a little bit involved with that. Um, there's another thing that happened in England that was a big deal that was well documented in history, and they were a part of that too. And everything has this kind of question of, oh, the things that they were involved with, were they hoaxes? Like, how credible were these two people? Um, but Ed Warren died, I want to say, maybe like 15 years ago. But Lorraine Warren, she was alive until just recently. I think she died within like the last 3 or 4 years. So they actually had interviews with her specifically when they made some of these other Conjuring movies. And I think she was even on set sometimes to kind of guide them or just talk to them about how it happened or what her experience was. And one thing that's really interesting as well is the fact that a lot of these people that are involved with these cases are still alive. And so you have these moments when I think in the original Conjuring advertisement, they had the family, the girls that were involved in that movie. they're grown adults and grown women, and they had a picture with all of them, and then they had the actors that were playing them, and they were talking to them about, oh, like, yeah, this is, basically just how it happened, and that type of stuff. And you can't help but wonder, like, okay, is this really how it went down? Because some of this stuff is pretty fantastical, but that's how it is.
Yeah, I mean, like they do that in all movies basically that are based on true stories. There's always stuff in there that like maybe doesn't necessarily need to be changed, but it's changed. Like even for stuff like Bohemian Rhapsody, obviously that's based on a true story. It's based on the band Queen,
Yeah.
and the life of Freddie Mercury. But there's a lot of stuff in there that's not true. And the thing that's the it's like the little things, the little fine details that won't even necessarily affect the story, are not true. And they do this stuff for because I guess the way you have to put it is it's not a documentary, it's a movie.
Yeah.
There's it's still in a sense an art piece, and so whenever you paint something, so to say, you're gonna change stuff to make it look the way that you want to look, so that you can say what you
Yeah.
want to say through your art, and that's exactly what they did. So, but I'm just interested in like what is what is true and what is not true, and I mean you can kind of get an idea of what is probably not true, but then there's also like that fine line of what they believe, like the people who, the real life people, what they believe to be true, and what the filmmakers are taking from that and like showing that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's funny. That's actually a good moment to bring up the ending because when I was watching the movie, one of the things that kept coming in my mind is that did this really happen where they legitimately went to they went to a lawyer and they went to a judge and said not guilty by reason of demonic possession? Like I that the idea that that was real like confounded me. But then at the same time, I'm thinking to myself, well, there's no way that he got proven innocent with that as his defense because then we'd hear about that defense a lot more often if that worked, right? So when we get to the end of the movie, I'm thinking to myself, okay, for the sake of solving the problem, yay, that's done, but this guy still has to go to jail, right? Because there's no way that this defense works. And the movie doesn't even waste time trying to do a whole kind of trial to show how they can prove the existence of demonic possession or how he was possessed at the time that he killed somebody. It just skips right to the end, and then the credits show you, yeah, he was convicted. And it's almost like the movie knows that hearing someone say guilty would have been too much of a downer. So the movie tries to like kind of water it down by having the text say, "Oh, he was convicted, but he got married, and he served 5 years, and they're still married to this day." Now credits, and it's kind of just like, okay, well, I believe that happened,
Oh, that's right. Happy ending.
right?
I mean, the thing about that though, and like another reason why I thought this movie was interesting was the law aspect of it, and the fact that there were scenes that took place in court and stuff like that. It wasn't so focused on that part of it, but I did find it interesting because in real life, even if I mean, basically in real life, if someone gets murdered, there's gonna be a case. There's going to be a trial and stuff like that. What I found
Right.
interesting though is that they actually pleaded in the movie demonic possession, and like at the end of the movie, like when things are closing up, I was like, I bet he's gonna get convicted, not for murder but for manslaughter. And I was actually surprised it was only 5 years, but I was like, oh, I called it. It was gonna be manslaughter. But I can
Right.
see it because, like, if there are multiple places or multiple cases in different areas where there's the same thing, like I think it was some kind of totem that was used, and it was the same totem that was used multiple times in different places, then it does kind of sort of make the connection that there's someone else behind it, or like there's just something else going on. I definitely feel like I wish I read up on it a little bit more before we did this show so that I would have more information.
Yeah, it's almost funny because it's almost feels like it'd be more interesting to talk about the actual case of what happened than the movie itself,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
even with the cursed, yeah, those cursed totems that you were bringing up, the fact that they appeared in multiple places that where people were murdered, even if it's not a thing of, okay, well, this is clearly demonic possession, it would at least call into question, did this person have some kind of influence over these two people, where the put to the point where maybe they even made these suggestions to where this person believed they were cursed and then they acted in this way because of that belief that was put into their mind by this other human being. Like, and then that's more of an argument that you could make to try to say how somebody may not be as culpable as you might think.
Yeah, there's also like an element of reasonable doubt. Like there could be someone else involved that is kind of putting things in motion, and that's why I was like manslaughter, because like I think that it's very easy to believe that he didn't do it voluntarily. Like maybe it was an accident or something like that, but whatever it is, I do feel like they probably, because of the supporting evidence where the totem appeared in other places, that gave them a good enough backing for him to not get the death penalty.
Right. Yeah, so little things like that kind of make sense for the sake of the story. But one of the things about this movie is that it's a horror movie, right? And so I watch horror movies all the time. You don't watch horror movies barely ever if you can avoid it. So then, for what I found interesting for this movie is like, from my perspective going into it, I'm thinking it is going to, I'm feeling like it's going to be a kind of heavy based horror movie. But one of the things all these horror movies have in common is that they're kind of mystery movies as well, because the movies are always about finding out why the person is being haunted, why this curse is happening. You have these clues and you have to do research. So every horror movie normally ends up being a mystery film as well. But one of the things about this movie was that got me was that it felt like it leaned more into kind of the mystery aspect, or almost kind of mystery slasher aspect of the film, more so than the horror of it. Even when when they capture the guy, the demon is gone. There's a lot of this movie where it's spent in precincts or stuff like that, and it's is spoilers we already said, but it's not actually a real haunting. It's witchcraft.
Yeah, it felt like it was an investigation movie as opposed to a scary movie. I mean, there
Yeah.
were definitely a lot of scares, and there, like, you know how you can tell when there's gonna be like a pop scare or something. Um,
Right.
every time something like that started happening, I would like I would like stop watching the screen, and then I was with my boyfriend, and I was like, describe to me what's happening. What's happening?
Oh
I
wow.
can't look at it. Just describe it to me.
Oh man. Poor guy. Uh yeah, I did not have that feeling. I these movies you start to get how they manipulate you, and you can tell a lot of times when jump scares are going to happen. It's the music that they use, the build up, then the music cuts out, and it's only a matter of time before you see a thing. And so this movie kind of did that. It was kind of cookie cutter in that way. Um, I I think that the story of the movie is fine, but I didn't feel like, for me as somebody who was doing everything in his power to make this movie creep him out, watching it late at night by himself with the lights off, it it didn't. And I was even watching it with headphones on so that I could really hear the music, and had it turned up. And it didn't really feel like it didn't really feel scary to me. There were some cool things that when I saw, I was like, okay, that was a cool effect, which I want to talk about shortly. But it, overall, I kind of felt that horror wise it was kind of bland.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, it still got me. because
Hmm.
I am not conditioned to watch scary movies. Um, but I would say like I have watched other things that were much scarier, like that Netflix TV show, um, Hill House, I
Yeah,
think.
Haunting on Hill
Hill
House.
House, that one's way scary. That one still scares me. I still have that imagery in my head, and it makes me kind of scared to go down in my dark hallway. But anyway,
Hmm.
this one I feel like wasn't as bad because it didn't feel like um it felt predictable. You know, like you said, like you know when the jump scare is going to be. I knew when to turn around and stop watching. That's probably why I got through the movie.
Right. But I will give and this is one thing I'm going to talk about with both of these movies that we're going to be talking about today. But both these movies do some very good what appears to be in-camera effects. And there's a lot of cool kind of transitions, and there's one of the ones that pops up in my head is, there's this scene near the end of the movie where Ed is in like this kind of dark hallway underground, and he sees Lorraine running towards him. It's a very brief second, but she's running towards him, and then she steps into shadow for like a second, and then when she steps out of the shadow, it's the woman that they're chasing. And there's a lot of cool things like that. I think there's even one when she's investigating the murder scene and how they kind of transition when Lorraine is looking for the girls, or the other girl's body, and she goes to the site of where they died, and they're in the woods and it's day, and then how this camera kind of transitions into like night, and it's into this and it gets into her kind of otherworldly scene where she can see the things that was happening, and then the cuts between her doing it as the person, or and then coming back and being herself and not having the knife and then having the knife. There's some really cool edits and transitions that I thought the movie really utilized pretty well.
Yeah, I didn't watch that part. Um, yeah. It was too scary, so I turned around.
Yeah, but like what Striker's saying, like none of the Conjuring movies have been particularly that scary. And maybe it's because they're trying to do the whole thing where they're based on true stories. I think the second one is the strongest that I've seen, and the more scary ones in the universe are kind of the ones that aren't so based on like their case files, or don't try too hard to try to make themselves feel like it's absolutely real, like this absolutely happened. So, like The Conjuring is probably just as a whole a little bit more watered down for a horror movie franchise, and maybe that's because they want people who don't feel like they can watch horror movies to be able to still feel like they can watch these.
Yeah, I mean, if I like was asked to, I'd probably watch another movie in the universe. Going off of this one that I just saw, I thought it was interesting. And I think that's probably why I didn't suggest that we should put it on the other show.
Yeah, and I can see that. It has interesting things that are happening, and the the mystery element of it and investigation element of it is kind of cool. And what's happening, while it's not scary, it's not I wouldn't say it's a bad story. Essentially, you have this woman that can mess with what you see. So she basically casts genjutsu on you, where you think that you're doing one thing, like, oh my gosh, I'm slashing up a demon. And then you come to and you're like, oh my gosh, I just slashed up my family. So that's kind of cool. It's kind of messed up too. It's kind of like, yo, you were evil.
Yeah, I did kind of like that because it was sort of like an explanation for what we were seeing. So, in a sense, it's like telling us like the scary stuff that you're seeing isn't real because it's just all in your head
Right.
and it's not actually like existing in real life. So,
Which, now that you say that out loud, is probably why I didn't find the movie that scary. That's probably another element to it, because one, it's just a person, which people can be scary, but in the context of these movies where you're expecting some type of supernatural entity to be the problem, you realize it's a person with superpowers, essentially. And she kind of can. Rules for her powers are a little weird, but at the end of the day, the things that she's doing are basically illusions. So that was the things that aren't happening aren't real. Um, I feel like the one scene that what might have been the most effective for me for making me creeped out was when they were in the coroner's
In the
office
morgue.
or the morgue, and then that dead body got up.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this feels a little creepy. But that's probably like and then some of the turning and contorting stuff. I was like, ee, that looks uncomfortable.
Yeah. I mean that the fact that it was explained definitely made me feel better about watching the movie. So, yeah. I mean, there were a few things though that I thought was weird in terms of just making it a good cohesive movie. For example, at the beginning, father gets hit in the head with a plate or something, and then Ed's like, "Do you have a first aid kit?" And I was like, how about just, are you okay? We can keep doing the thing because we need to do the
This is
thing, and
not the
then
time
like,
for a first aid kit.
I know. How about we get the first aid kit after all this crazy stuff is over, and then we can heal everybody at, I don't know, the hospital.
Right? And also, one thing about these movies, does does holy water work or not? Does reading scripture work or not? Because I feel like the you always see these exorcisms where the priests are doing these things, and it's always to varying effectiveness. Sometimes it's very effective, sometimes it's not effective at all. And maybe that's what the movie was trying to say is just that they couldn't exorcise the demon because the demon was called there because of like basically a hex bag. But I'm just like, yo, this is kind of crazy. You guys are literally doing nothing, and it seems like this is what is supposed to work. So as demon hunters, it feels like you're not doing your proper research.
Yeah, and it was just weird how like there's so many people and they couldn't take the one kid down.
Oh yeah, I mean that's demonic possession. No, that's like them holding it down a demon. It's
Yeah,
just
but they
weird
like
that like
all got taken out pretty much. Like,
they basically should have died. They basically all should die. I thought it was just funny how no one saw this one guy tell the demon so that he could have him instead of except for Ed. And then of course Ed has the heart problems and then no can't tell anybody until later after the thing has been done. But I did think it was funny that when Lorraine calls the cops, she basically is like, there's gonna be a tragedy. No, hey, can you get there to try to stop something? No, she already knows. Like, yeah, no, someone's about to die, so sorry.
yeah, that was interesting. The other thing I thought was weird was like, where did the parents go? They were like only at the beginning, and then after that, like all communications and the like, the sister even brought her little brother to the prison. Like, where did the parents go?
Those are
They're just
extra actors.
they
We
just
can't pay
weren't in
to
the
bring them
movie
back.
anymore. I mean, at least kill them off if you're not gonna have them. It's a horror movie. You're
You're
allowed to
right.
kill
They,
people.
they really do just disappear out of the story. I didn't even think about that. Because they should have been there as well. Because they care about this kid too. So,
Hmm.
and he also is this is happening to him because of him trying to save their kid.
Yeah, I'd be like, why aren't they at the hospital too? Or not the hospital, the prison. And just
Hmm.
like they just vanished. There were
Right?
no
Oh,
parents.
yeah. All right. And speaking of things that is like why this isn't effective, but it feels like you guys think this it should be. The whole thing with the holy water, where he poured the holy water around him in a circle, and I'm thinking, oh, that's going to be able to protect him. The priest comes to him and says, God helps those who helps himself. At first, I thought he was going to like kill himself, like to try to kill the demon with the holy water, but then he sprays it around him. I'm like, okay, so this you should be safe. So I think maybe if I think the movie was trying to say that it wasn't a regular demon, and because it wasn't it is a demon, but because the demon is being commanded through witchcraft, the same rules don't apply. but the movie didn't really make that clear. And as somebody who really loves things like Supernatural, where there are established rules for how to counter and beat any type of supernatural entity, I would have appreciated some type of knowledge of why the things that these people thought should work weren't working.
Honestly, I think they just had that there because they needed to have him give him a thing that he could use so that he could cut himself, and that's basically the only reason that happened.
You're right.
So a
Yeah,
tool.
you're right. I forgot he used that.
The other thing I thought was weird was when Ed goes to visit the the other priest who is like retired and the father of the villain, I guess.
Hmm.
And he's like, "Follow me," and then they like go downstairs. It's just him and Ed, or no, it's not Ed. It's him and
Lorraine.
Lorraine. And then he tells Lorraine, "Follow me. I'm gonna show you something." And then there's like a weird insert, and then it
He
cuts back.
disappears,
What?
and then he
Yeah,
disappears.
and then he disappears. And then Lorraine is like, "Where are you? Where'd you go, father?" I was like, "What is happening? How did they get
Yeah,
separated when he was literally like, 'Follow me'?" And then they get separated in like literally the next shot after the weird insert.
yeah, yeah. And then he's still there. There's just them trying to creep you out. Um, yeah, no, there's a lot of weird things. I think that's why at the end of the day, for me, this movie is it's it's fine. It has some interesting things that happen. But I don't think it's very scary. I don't think that it really, if it's something that you're like thinking to yourself, okay, I'm interested in seeing a really like solid horror movie. I want to scare myself. I don't think that this movie is that movie, but I do think there are elements of the movie that are entertaining. So I think that you can still go to the movie and walk out and feel like, okay, well, was it what I was expecting? No, but were there some things in there I enjoyed? Yeah. So that's how I kind of feel about the movie.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it was a terrible movie. It was interesting, like I said. It's not something that I would tell other people you should watch it because it's scary. I would tell other people to watch it because it has an interesting element to it. But I personally, since I don't like watching scary movies, would not watch this movie unless I only watched it basically because you wanted me to watch it, and
Yeah, which is
thanks.
why I watched In the Heights, by the way. So we're even on that. Um, last thing I'll say about it was I think that this movie, the scariest part of this movie is the credits. When you get to the end and the music is playing and they're just like going through all like the photos and stuff, it's a very creepy ending sequence. So the movie at least has a creepy feeling at the end, but yeah, that's not present throughout the rest of it.
That's true. Yeah, the credits were really really scary because it I don't know if those were real, if they were like actually from the recordings of this actual case.
Right.
If it was, then like, oh my god, that's really scary and creepy. But if it was made up, then bravo,
Yeah.
because
Very
I believe it
disconcerting.
was real. It seemed
Yeah,
really
right.
real to me.
And that's part of the battle. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we close out?
Nope, I would very much like to stop talking about this movie and move on with my life.
All right. So that's gonna be it for our talk on The Conjuring. What do you guys think about it? Have you guys seen The Devil Made Me Do It? Have you seen the other Conjuring movies or the movies within the Conjuring universe? And do you think that those movies are scary, or do you think they're all kind of similar to the way this movie is handled? Whatever you thought, comment below. Let us know. And while you're down there, if you give us a like, share, and subscribe. Even if you don't, though, I've been Chris, and this has been
Cheryl, and we will see you all next time.